Welcome to ECE Biography, Sage Wisdom for Childcare Leaders. My name is Tony DiAugustino. I'm the founder and CEO of Inspire Care 360. In this series of exclusive podcasts, we will meet with tenured and growing leaders in the childcare field, typically operating medium to very large childcare operations from tens of schools to thousands of schools. Our incentive is to learn what has been the path and traits that make outstanding leaders. Join us to glean the sage wisdom from these experienced individuals. Now, let's get started with ECE Biography, Sage Wisdom for Childcare Leaders.
On today's ECE CEO Biography, Sage Wisdom for the Childcare Leader, we have Kathy Ligon, the founder and CEO of HINGE Advisors. Kathy has a unique 40-plus year background in the early education business, financial, and growth strategy services. After helping a regional childcare brand multiply from 5 to 125 sites in several different states, she started her own early education transaction advisory firm to help others in early education business owners maximize their school's values as well. Kathy is a trusted expert in business growth and financial strategy within the ECE industry. She authors Exchange Magazine's annual status report for-profit childcare and recently published The 5 Pillars of Purpose-Driven Profit, a valuable resource for childcare business owners. Through her book, she empowers childcare owners to build sustainable, mission-driven business that thrives long-term. She is a sought-after speaker. Kathy shares her insights both at statewide and national events. She also founded the Shift Childcare Leadership Conference. And if you are in this industry, you probably know Kathy. It is a premier 3-day event designed to equip early education professionals with opportunities for growth, networking, and industry-specific expertise. In 2022, Kathy received a South Carolina Women in Business Award, where she was recognized for her outstanding entrepreneurial leadership and impact in the early education industry. Her work empowers owners, educators, and investors to build financially stable businesses while keeping quality education at the heart of industry growth. Kathy has been featured on numerous webinars and podcasts, and honestly was our very first webinar guest for Inspire Care 360 back in 2018. She's a regular contributor to Exchange Magazine and has also been quoted in the New York Times. In 2024, she founded Boost, a nonprofit that provides financial assistance to teachers facing personal hardship, really looking to give back to the ECE industry. With Boost, Kathy combines her professional expertise with her personal mission to uplift those who shape young minds. We are so pleased to have Kathy, who has built an amazing business and following based on her ethics, values, and leadership. Welcome, Kathy Ligon. Kathy, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Tony, I'm doing great. I'm so glad to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you. It's always wonderful to see you, and I always enjoy seeing your smile. Where are you today?
I'm at my home, in my home office, actually, Greenville, South Carolina. The Hinge team just moved into a new office, but I'm in the home office having a little bit of quiet time to talk to you.
Well, that is wonderful, and I greatly appreciate it. You guys moved into new offices. I know you guys, every time you get on stage at Shift, which I was just at the most recent one, which is just an amazing event, by the way. Just love the event. That team keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, we've been so fortunate to attract some amazing talent. I'm so honored to work with that team, and thank you for your kind words about our shift event. I'm really proud of what the team puts together there, and agree that our guests are so generous with their contribution to content, which I thought was amazing this year, and just the conversations that were had. It was special.
Yeah, it really was. And it's exactly right, too. I know you give a lot of credit to your team, and you do have a really wonderful and responsive team. I know for a fact that I was on my way there and I couldn't get into the app, and I reached out, and they were like immediately right there. They were like, I'm like, you know what? Don't you have a whole event you're trying to manage and not worry about? But they're responding right away. But thanks for
Yeah,
being on the
they're
podcast.
fantastic.
And by the way, this is sort of for those of you who are listening, this is the, ECE CEO biography, sage wisdom for childcare leaders. And as we do in this biography pick, what we're doing is we talk to different leaders within the childcare industry. The reason this is a little non-traditional is because we have Kathy Ligon here today. Kathy is the founder and CEO of HINGE Advisors. And as that, she's not traditionally over childcare schools, who have been our former, podcast for the CEOs. But one of the things I've really enjoyed watching since I've been in this industry since about 2010, I've really watched her ascension along with her organization, not only from a name shift to a different brand to then the conferences she's produced. I've really watched you develop and ascend within the industry and demonstrate a leadership position where people want to be part of what you do. And let me start off with that. Why
Well,
is that? What is that secret sauce you have? Why do
those
people?
are amazingly kind words, Tony. I just love this industry and I love the people in it. And it is my greatest joy and blessing to be able to create where I see gaps in what's needed in the industry. So things really bug me for quite a while. And as it relates to shift, I realized for years that there wasn't, there are some great conferences out there. There really are. And they're rightly so. They're very focused on operations and some business and financial content. But I wanted a place that was dedicated 100% to business and financial content and connections and people who were instrumental in moving the industry forward in a very positive way. And it took a bit. We just passed our 7th event, and we grew from 200 to a sellout of 500 this year, and we're going to hold there because we have bigger demand. But I like the connectivity, and I like the joy other people feel in contributing positive content and forward-looking approaches. And it's the greatest joy. It's probably the funnest project I've ever done. But also I take that approach at Hinge, that what I like more than anything is to connect with other stakeholders in the industry: owners, operators, real estate investors, private equity investors, international investors. What are people doing? What are their desires to contribute to meaningful programs for children and families? So when I hear that, and I feel like there's a gap in the industry, it pounds on me until I get tired of the pounding, and then one day I just wake up and say, we're doing something about this now. And everything doesn't work. We've definitely launched things that we've either shifted or we've stopped. But we're constantly trying to listen and reinvent so that we can support well.
Well, and that is absolutely wonderful. What comes to mind is whenever I talk with you or I see you at events, I just see you as a master facilitator. And that oftentimes is bringing people together, like-minded people, people who have similar interests and have just a sort of this compulsion to say, you know what, you're a good person and you're a good person. You probably would do well knowing each other. And that, I think, is a real talent sometimes out there.
Well, thank you for that, Tony. I think soon people will be afraid to say something innovative in front of me, because as soon as they do, I'm in my head going, how can I use that person or that idea? And then I start saying, will you share that at Shift? Can we do a webinar? What about this? So really it is a culmination of learning about what very progressive people are doing or thinking about and sharing or creating. And I find it so refreshing. I hear this at Shift a lot from the investment community who work in other industries that they've never been in an industry where people are so eager to share and support. And that's been my experience for my whole 39 years now. So, I was in led a childcare company for 17 years before starting Hinge 21 years ago. So, it has been one of the reasons I've stayed exclusively in this industry is just that everyone understands when we all get better, we all get better. And there are no secrets that are going to harm us if other people know it. And they also take advantage of what we're doing because we're all here to support children, families, and staff. And if I learn something, I can share it with someone else. People are overjoyed with that. And that is one of the strong reasons this industry has kept me for my whole career.
And, as you mentioned, for those who are listening out in the audience there, Kathy comes by this rather organically. She mentioned it. She was 17 years with, I think it was called the Sunshine House.
That's right. Yeah.
And your last role there, I think, was a chief operating officer running that organization. And you are an accountant by trade. Is that it?
Yeah, Tony. So I'm an old bean counter in my soul. So I was in public accounting when I had a 4-year-old and a 6-week-old right in the middle of tax season. And back in the day, we didn't say, I think I'll take a couple of months off. We came back to work after a couple of weeks, and that tax season almost killed me. So I heard that the then 5-site group where my children went to school, which was the Sunshine House, needed someone to do their financial work. So meaning to be there about 10 minutes, I ended up there 17 years instead.
Wow.
And had the honor to go from a financial role to an operations role and then to a growth role. And it was really, we grew that company to around 120 schools in the 17 years I was there. So I had the ability to figure out what valuations look like, to learn what was important to sellers, to learn how to integrate teams, to learn how to transition legally and through licensing and how to protect people with legal agreements. And then I developed what was the beginning of helping other people exit by starting Hinge and leveraging the relationships I made there for 17 years. So it was a joy and a blessing for me. I feel very honored to be able to have grown and contributed that organization, but also to have taken those skills and experiences over to creating Hinge when I realized that there was a big need in the industry for not only someone who could lead transactions from a people approach, but also from a financial approach. And even beyond that, not just lead transactions, but to help people really understand what their financial performance look like, what it should look like, what it could look like, where were the gaps that would lead them to greater financial health and allow them the resources to do the mission they got in the industry for. So I know this is a tangent for me, Tony. You're going to be sorry you asked me. But I always like to say that financially thriving and what you got in this business for are not at odds with each other. It sounds like they would be.
Right.
Either I can thrive financially or I can create excellent programs that support teams, children, and families. They're necessary for each other. So you can't do one without the other. You also can't do it if you're not personally thriving. So
well, it's interesting.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is exactly what we want to talk about. Matter of fact, I'm taking what you're talking about because, I own and operate a few schools myself in addition to Inspire Care 360. But with my schools, I've oftentimes got into, I wouldn't say arguments, I'd say debates with licensors. And, the licensors will come in to me and they'll say, Kathy, they'll be like, Tony, this is all about the child. This is all about the child. And I'll say, no, I go, you're wrong. And they're like, no, 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 you don't understand. This is, I go, no, this is about our teachers. These are about our families. These are about our administrators. These are about our providers, our suppliers. And if we're doing everything right, the child becomes amazing. And
Right.
that's why
Good approach.
it's the end result. The reason though I talk about it this way is because in our industry, so many owner and operators have been intimidated to be, you cannot make a profit in this business. You shouldn't be profitable. This is God's work, or this is the work that is just, you should feel ethically, morally founded if you do this work without being compensated. But candidly, we know, you know, and I've learned from you and your team too, which, you know, have been great lessons, that if you don't pay yourself, you have no way to take care of your team. And your team then has no way to take care of those kids. So you really need to set yourself up for that. So that's one of the things I've really learned from your style of approach in this industry. So if you could tell me with that, because I'm going to hold you a little tight and not let you go off on too many rants here. But in your early days, what sort of developed Kathy into this person when you were young? When you were young, who were your influences that you sort of gleaned this approach that started to develop who Kathy was?
Oh, wow. Good question, Tony. I feel like that, first of all, if I go pre-work experience,
Yeah.
my father was a medical doctor who owned his own practice. So I always was fascinated by the notion that you could own a business. And early on, that's all I knew, right? That you could own a medical practice. And so if you would have asked me back then, I would have said, yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna own this practice. My father died unexpectedly when I was young, and not in the business of selling schools. I was actually at Sunshine House by that time, but we sold his practice. So those early experiences of seeing how hard he worked, for one thing, but also the fact that it was his and it was meaningful. I noticed that, and I think this is true of the medical and the education community in some respects, that people are approaching their companies from a trade standpoint. So they're a medical professional or they're an educator, and that's the background they had. But they're not necessarily business people with a ton of financial training or a ton of business training. And it was a passion for me to figure out how to operate this service-based, mission-driven company with a business approach that allowed both things that thrive at the same time. So over time, I saw many physicians lose their practices or struggle in their practices because they weren't able to really focus on the business and financial side of what they were doing. And then that became many people with a passion for children, teams, and families, which is a passion I share, that struggled personally, because this industry attracts people who will always put other people first.
Yeah.
I adore that. And I say to them a lot, I feel very passionately about children, teams, and families, and they have a lot of advocates. What the business owner doesn't have as much is a lot of advocates. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful of any other stakeholder. What I am trying to do is help business owners understand that it's necessary, okay, required that you thrive personally to do this mission. You can't be awake in the middle of the night, worried about the payroll and the rent, and show up to work the next day and support literally hundreds of humans the next day. You can't do it. It's not humanly possible. So it's a mission that I gravitated toward early, that combination of mission-driven work and the ability to operate it in a way that drove the mission. And to me, what that means is thriving from a business and financial standpoint. So it's a, it's been the mission that I put on myself, and this industry certainly has made it easy because, in 39 years, I could count, this is true, this is no exaggeration. I could count on one hand the number of people that I thought in one of these industries did not have their heart in the right place.
Wow.
And why would you go anywhere else? Why would you ever
Yeah.
leave? I'm never leaving. I joke to my team that they're going to have to bury me out back because, and they also say we're going to be wheeling you out on the stage one day. So
Well, I don't know
that'll be
about that. You
fun.
seem to have wonderful energy still. So,
Well,
but
thank you. But I think that's where, that model that I watched and was so fascinated by, plus a lot of opportunity along the way. There were people who allowed me to create and try things, to fail and to not be condemned when I failed, to fail with the ability to be humble about it and make an adjustment and move on. And I say to my team a lot that you're gonna make a mistake, and no one is going to crush you for making a mistake when you say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I mean, I'll do everything I can to make this right. I made a mistake, and my team says that to clients. I back them up on it, and not one single person has ever said, "Oh, you're so terrible. I'm never going to work with you again." As a matter of fact, I think it draws them in. They feel honored by a person who is able to just outright say, I'm sorry, I goofed. Here's what I'm going to do to make it right. It's hard. It's a hard thing for us humans to do. But I've never had a single person pounce on that and condemn a person that made an honest mistake. So that
yeah.
is something that we practice at Hinge that's hard.
Well, I think it is very hard. And you just gave a lot of different examples of things that I want to visit here. One that you mentioned up front, and I do want to get back to mistakes and things of that happens is trying and failing and thriving. But one thing that you started leading into is leadership is lonely. It's a lonely thing to be in a leadership position, even if you have a fantastic spouse, if you have a fantastic business partner, you got great friends. It's sometimes difficult because you have this stuff going on in your mind all the time of how you would love to see the future as to where you are today. At least that's what goes on in my little gerbil wheel up there. When you look at that, it seemed like you were starting to relate that owners and operators have their own journey. And you saw an opportunity, especially like in this industry, to be helpful in that because everybody else in this industry seems, other than people in that one hand, seem to be helpful to one another, which I did find very interesting. I think it's become more and more prevalent over the years that people are like, hey, it's not me against you, it's us against the world, and we've got to figure this out. What are your thoughts about the journey of a leader in sort of a lonely world at times?
Yeah, it can be a lonely world, Tony. It really can. I have a couple of thoughts. I honestly struggled for the early part of my leadership journey, especially in aligning with other female leaders. And so largely my mentors were male, which is fine. They're fantastic leaders for both, but I didn't have a model for that. And so that took a while. And while I feel like the male leaders in my early career gave me a lot of opportunity, I didn't feel like I saw the leadership style that was a fit for me personally. That's not to say that their style was wrong. It just, I feel like every person has to find their unique style. And um, mine is very abundance, inclusive, grateful, focused, I guess are words that I would use if I think about it. That there's always enough. We put our clients' needs first, and frankly, I'm not even thinking about what this is going to do for me when I enter into a, I'm not crazy about it. I do have to have a budget and pay people,
Yeah.
so I'm not saying I'm just complete fly by the wind with financial performance. That's against what I preach for everyone. But once I set the framework for it, I'm in the mode of what does my client need? How can I support their dreams? How do we rally around making that happen? And if we're successful on their behalf, then we also get paid. So in our work, we don't get paid until we conclude a process for our clients.
Yeah.
I like that level of risk taking that we take along with the client.
Yeah. And I think that it's very admirable. Where did this come from with you from you being a young girl to the time that you started developing and going through school, from the time you graduated or what have you, and you got into, where did these influences come from that really sort of made you the person about abundance, inclusivity, gratefulness? These are, yes, they're traits of leaders, but you seem to embrace those at your own level in a very different way.
But that is a good question that you might have just stumped me on, Tony, because I don't know. I mean, it's an easier way to live. Let me say that. So I will say, when I want peace in my life, that if I'm grateful and I have a mentality of abundance for myself, my team, my clients, when I am inclusive and I share openly, and I don't fight. I don't have the energy for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll fight for you, but I won't fight against you. It's just
Yeah.
not, I just don't have it in me. And so I don't know. It's probably, I mean, it feels like it's just an easier way for me to live, so I don't know how else to explain that, but
How would you characterize yourself when you were younger, when you were in high school? Who was Kathy in high school?
woo, I was very responsible. I will say that. So I had, I grew up in my high school years with my father and younger siblings. So I had a very responsible role, very, very
Yeah.
young. And I was just, running the show. Can you imagine that? So I also had an opportunity. I think a lot of it's in my nature, if I'm just honest, that I
Yeah.
think I sort of like to be in charge, and
Yeah.
I also like to give other people the opportunity to create and be successful in whatever way is their mission, but I think I just have always been a person, even as a young person, who um, was a little bit in charge, and
Yeah.
just took care of others, and learned some hard lessons along the way, made a lot of mistakes, and I'm grateful for all of those. I'm
Well,
grateful for the difficult times and the times when I started my company and ran out of money, and used credit cards to buy groceries, and went to the grocery with a calculator, and when it
oh,
got to $40 a week, I left the grocery. Those are good. Those are
yeah.
really good times. I can call on that again. I can do it again if I have to.
Well, and it's impressive, because there's one thing, like, especially if you're young and you're sort of almost thrusted into a role where you have siblings and others where you're like, okay, we need to rally the troops. This is sort of becoming my role. I need to rally the troops. That's one way I could see where you look at the sort of abundance, the inclusivity, the, you know, gratefulness that you have. When you start to develop, and you're saying you made mistakes, and we've talked about that a couple times, and even we had a little pre-conversation, I said I want to challenge you on some of those things. You know, as you started to develop through your career, and let's talk a little bit first before you got into Hinge, and you were working for somebody else, right? So you're working in the childcare space. You know, you've probably had, obviously you elevated yourself there. When you look back on that, were there things that you would change at all in the way that you approach the market, knowing what you know now? Is there things that you would change different? Because we have people who are listening in, they might have one childcare school, they might have four, they might be just taking on the risk of going, I'm buying all 9 of them, you know, and I'm going to the next level. You know, what were some of the things, if you reflect back on those years when you were helping that school get to the next level, what were some of the things that you were doing or things that you learned from later life that you wish you applied then?
Yeah, such a great question, Tony. So I have two answers to that. My first quick answer is that I would not have changed my journey because even the crazy, stupid stuff that I did were important in my learning. So, and I'm grateful for the hard experiences. I think I would have learned to trust myself a little bit better. I think that I was swayed by other people's management styles at times when I think I probably knew weren't the best approach, but I didn't know another approach. Also feel like sometimes true leadership feels soft. And one thing that I've come to know is that it's not at all soft. First of all, you're never going to manage people. You can't manage human beings. They're humans. We can lead them. We can take action if things don't go well. But there were times when I was in positions where other people's management style was not congruent with what I felt like was the best approach, but I didn't know any other way. So I would try it out. I would try out harsher management approaches that always backfired, always. And luckily, I had some very good friends and employees who called me out on it at the time and would say things like, what in the world are you doing right now? That's ridiculous. And I thank them still when I see them for their strong pushback. But I think the main thing was trusting myself, trusting that as I grew with teams and with a company um, I that things were going to work out. When they were really hard and something would fall off the table and I would have the middle of the night panic. I'm talking about when people think they can't make the payroll and the rent.
Yeah.
And a contract would go away and I'm destitute in my mind again. And the next day the phone would ring because of the relationship development. So I'll parlay that into the second thing. So the first thing would be to trust myself and listen. You want to listen to other people's styles, but trust your instincts. You're going to be different from everybody else.
Yeah.
And the second thing is the power of relationship building. So in Hinge's life, you heard me say that I parlayed Hinge based on relationships with those I knew in the industry as buyers, not as clients, because our clients are sellers, but as buyers that I knew would treat people and companies well. And that's super important to me. But what I found the power of relationship building, there were two critical times in the company's history. 2009 and 10, the world died economically. We made almost zero for 2 years. That was the credit card years.
Yeah.
But what I immediately started to do was invest in relationships. I went to see people. I showed up. I said, what do you need? How can I help you? Do you need some support with and not to be paid, just to
Right.
go and help people. I had to do something. I couldn't do nothing. And my thought was, at the end of this, I'm gonna be ready. I'm gonna be ready. And
Yeah.
at the end of 2 years, it just exploded, the work.
And,
And really it wasn't let's do her a favor and throw her something her way. It was connecting dots between opportunities and listening to people and trying to find solutions for what would make their program stronger and putting that together. And then the second time was COVID, so when COVID happened, in my head, I thought, well, here we go again, 2 more years of zero. But by that time, I'd trained myself and coached my team to be prepared for 2 years,
yeah.
and I hound them with it. I'm like, are you ready for a 2 year shutdown? Because my people only get paid when we close
Yeah.
work too. What we immediately did was invest in relationships again. I knew that we could get people to share their experiences, and that would help other people. And I made phone calls, and within the first month of COVID, we had national CEOs who were navigating the first school closures jumping on podcasts with us to share what they did, because they were calling licensing with what to do, and licensing said, we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know what to do. So they were making it up on the fly, but they were so gracious in all that they had going on to hop on podcasts and webinars to share what they were doing to navigate that process. And I was so grateful for the ability to do that, and for the past relationship building that meant I called a national CEO on a Saturday, Tom Wyatt at KinderCare, and said, Tom, help. People
Yeah.
are really struggling. He said, what do you want? What do you need? I'll be
See,
there
that's
next week.
amazing.
He's trying to navigate 2,000 schools, And so that's the kind of people that we're talking about. And what actually happened was 3 months later, the investment world went, wait, what is this childcare thing that's keeping us all propped up economically? Maybe we are interested in this, and the phone began to ring like crazy. So that all worked out fine. But I think it's counterintuitive what I'm about to say, but this would be my second thing, that make investments when you don't have enough, and make those investments in relationships, because every single business decision is a relationship decision. Everyone.
Yeah. No, and I think you
Everyone.
bring up,
Nobody does business with people they don't feel strongly about.
no, and you just, and it's funny because both statements are really about trust, right? First one is to trust your gut, trust yourself. The second one is you're basically building trust with others, because people want to work with people who they like, who they feel are the same moral or ethical values, or the ones who will stand behind what they do. And I know when I first met you, you were probably the very first person we had on a webinar way back when, about 5 years ago. And I remember even in those conversations, we talked about, hey, could we refer stuff to each other? And you're like, yeah, whatever I do, no worries. I'm happy to do it, and I'm not happy, I don't need anything for it. And it was very much of a sort of an outpouring type of relationship. And I think when you look at the leaders out there, something that I have learned, over the past several years too, is you have to look sometimes at what it means to be paid for something. Some people are so financially focused that they feel it's always a dollar sign. And I'm a big believer. Like I get in conversations with my fiance or whatever sometimes. And I'm like, hey, listen, we don't have to be even Steven. Everything does not have to be even Steven. In other words, because I do something nice for you does not mean that I'm expecting something back. And I would say that you really you represent a very similar model. Because I do something nice for you doesn't mean that you have to do something nice for me, but it's a nice community. This is the community that I want to build around me. So I think the way that you look at trust is a way that can make a big impact on ascending leaders these days, is the fact of where is their trust lying in themselves? Is the trust, do they have the trust of their teams? Do they have the trust of the people they want to do business with? Any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, thank you for your very kind words and interesting conversation around that. I really have never thought that hard about it. So interesting that you call that to my attention. So I've had a practice forever of not being paid to um, bring other people business. Not that I don't want them to be successful, I just don't want to be paid for it because I'm immediately not objective, right? So,
Right.
Tony, if I believe in what you do and I feel great about it, I'm telling the world anyway, because I'm constantly sharing resources and people. The second that I have an economic advantage for it, my objectivity is gone. And I don't know, that feels heavy to me. Like I said, I like a simple, carefree life, so that feels burdensome to do. But yeah, that's a practice that I've been very I feel very strongly about. I also don't compromise the shift content we do have sponsors for our event. We're grateful for that, but I don't compromise the content and drive it towards sponsors. I am grateful for them and love that they want to make a contribution. And I develop content completely independently, that I want to bring the very best information to people and not make it sponsorship driven. So those are just a couple of examples of things that, well, number one, make my life more peaceful and easier, but also just keep the integrity that when I say to somebody, you need to call Tony D'Agostino, they'll know that I'm sincere. It's because I believe in Tony.
Well, and
Right. So,
exactly. Well, and it is, and by the way, your friendship has been always well appreciated there too, because what you're saying is very genuine. So let me ask you this a little bit away from where we were talking about sort of the trust of yourself, your gut, the trust of building those foundational relationships in the networking. You know, as we talk to others out there who are leaders who are trying to, it's a tough time, I think, still for childcare owners. We know from talking to a number of them that some of them are struggling to make payroll right now. Others seem to be flourishing, and some of them are still struggling. And everybody has their own journey. It's not like we're all sitting in the middle of Raleigh, Durham, where things are just blowing up, crazy, and they're building, new apartments all over the place. Sometimes we're in rural areas that are, haven't, been touched in a long time with a lot of growth. When you look at your ideals about when you developed your organization, what to you are sort of the foundational pillars? And by the way, I'm using that word pillars for a reason in the future. But what are the foundational pillars that you see as what you should structure and build a company on for the future at this point in your life? When you look at this and building a company, what are some of those foundational pillars?
and are you referencing Hinge or what I think childcare business owners should base their
I
pillars on?
think it's important that you experience share for yourself with Hinge, but I still think that childcare business owners can relate to it, or anybody else who listens to this podcast, because I'd rather have you experience share from yourself as to a perception of what they need, unless you've had that experience yourself.
Yeah, interesting question, Tony. Yeah, I've got one that I say so much to my team that I guess I've never really thought about it as, what would be a top pillar, but it comes up so frequently that I'm going to say it. We have a very strong um, policy, if you want to call it that, that we always sacrifice money for a relationship. Always. If I believe that my team has acted in someone's very best interest, but that person isn't happy. And frankly, that doesn't happen often because
Sure.
my team they are the kindest, most competent, wonderful people, but rarely, but at times someone will not be happy with something. I don't need to argue it. I don't need to agree with it. I don't need you to give me a novel of explanation about it. I want to talk about it and understand it so we can be better in the future. But if there's something that trades off money in any way that would compromise a relationship, the money's got to go, and I have never been sorry,
Yeah.
ever been sorry that when we've made a decision to accept less money for something, give money back, do something that had a money effect, if it preserved a relationship, I've never been sorry.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's a wonderful, piece that people struggle with. They're looking at whether it be childcare owners like myself, you have a family who hasn't paid in a long time or whatever, and there's a lot of money at stake, or there could be a decent amount, and then you're like, do I put good money after bad to pursue that, or how do I want to handle this? So, what I hear you saying is preserving the relationships are more paramount to you. Not saying that you shouldn't pursue that, but saying that, it's more paramount for you that the relationship is really takes top notch as to just the dollar, the almighty dollar.
Yeah, so that was a little bit of a different scenario because I feel strongly that when services are delivered and there's no problem, that somebody should pay you for that, right,
Yeah,
Tony? If your
absolutely.
teachers are there 14 hours a day and they're working so hard and you are trying to create amazing things for families and children, you should get paid for that. That should not be ignored.
Right.
But if someone comes to you and they're unhappy about something and they didn't understand a policy, and, I'm just saying that if I were to think about it purely economically, I don't think you can ever draw the dotted line directly from, gave on this money piece and it came back
Sure.
to me somehow, although I really do believe that it does because relationship decisions for every business are communicated constantly, right?
Absolutely.
But if someone's not happy with, for any reason, again, I don't have to understand it fully, although I ask, I don't have to agree with it. I always sacrifice money for a relationship. So that's a pillar that we live by.
One of the pillars I want to ask you about that you do very well, and you've talked heavily about how the quality level of your team and how kind they are. I've noticed over my years that when you're a leader, your team really is everything. You know, when it comes for you, you've been building a team up, I would say, since the time I've known you, probably since the early 2012 timeframe on to now, you've grown a substantial team. When you're looking into teammates to join you, what are the qualities that you're looking for? Because I think you've done a wonderful job of building a really solid organization.
Oh, I love that question so much because I say this a lot. We can teach skills. I can't teach a person how to really care about what they're doing. I, you have to come with that. Fortunately, we have both because our processes are very highly skilled. They require attorneys, transaction advisors, financial analysts, diligence managers, and highly skilled marketing teams. So they have to be skilled. I can
Yeah.
help them get more skilled but that comes way after the ability, the genuine care for the people they're serving. I can't teach them that, and we talk about a lot, but I don't have to talk too hard about this because my team is in their bones. They care more about meeting their clients' goals than they do about making the money or being personally successful. They are going to be personally successful, and they are, but that just comes naturally when you care more about meeting that other person's goals. And when
So
you keep that always in front of you, you're going
yeah.
to be fine. You're going to be very fine. You'll be more than fine.
So, and I think that's a wonderful perspective, whether you're owning or operating a childcare business or you're a brokerage business or an auto parts store. When you are looking to bring team members on, are there things that you look at in particular, because let's really, let's just dig into that just a little bit. It's a tough game. Recruiting is a tough game because it is who your organization becomes, are your people. And are there certain things that, obviously you're looking for caring and being genuine and authentic. Are there any other things you're looking for when you're saying, I want to bring people on board with me to be part of this journey?
Well, look, hiring's tough, isn't it, Tony? I
Oh,
mean,
gosh.
it's everyone's most difficult challenge right now. And it's really hard to assess people in an interview process, no matter how good you do. No matter how much time you spend with them, no matter how well you do. So it doesn't always work out for us, right? And sometimes we have to lovingly invite people to take what they learned with us and go and be successful somewhere else. But I tell you what has been the most successful thing for us, and our work is unique, of course. But we have several team members who we worked with on the other side of the transaction. So if we represented the seller, they represented the buyer. And let me tell you, when you end a very difficult process, selling processes are very challenging. They're very emotional. There are a lot of high level skills that are involved. But when you emerge from a transaction and you love the person on the other side, whoa, is that an amazing person? Now, I did not steal them for different reasons. I did say to a seller one time, as soon as I met her CFO, who is now one of our financial analysts, I'm so going to steal her from you one day. And she went, you stay. But situations change. She needed to make a change. I called her. I said, I wasn't kidding. I really need a new analyst. And can I talk to Marnie? And she's just one of our most valuable employees. Also, another analyst was the analyst for a buyer. Also, one of our diligence managers was one of our buyer diligence managers. She wanted to go do her own thing in real estate. And Alec on our team said, well, Melissa, if you ever change your mind, call me. And about 6 months ago, she called and said, I don't know if you were serious or not. And he said, absolutely, we were. So we have had the pleasure to work with people, and in a way that is sometimes a big conflict. But when that person makes it a collaborative experience, you see the kindness they display to their team and the person going through this process. That's a person you want to work with, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We've also had some good experience with hiring agencies who have put highly skilled people in certain areas
Okay.
in front of us. And like I said, those generally work out, but there have been on occasion they haven't. And I don't know how to completely assess people in just a general hiring process. I don't know if we're good at it. I think we're just like everyone else. We hit it out of the ballpark sometimes, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're like everyone else when we keep trying and trying and trying. If somebody's not a good fit, and maybe we change some tasks to see if it's a better fit. We all try really hard because we love people, and sometimes it's a hard thing, and you just have to make a change. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the rest of the team. So we definitely have those experiences but for us, working in relationships with people where we have the advantage to see their performance in advance has been huge.
Yeah, well, that is some wonderful thoughts on that, because I know, as you know, a lot of things associated with recruiting and recruiting good people has been a challenge for many people across the board. Believe it or not, we've already gone through an hour. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
you're fun to talk to, Tony.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I could go on for a long while with you because I have so many other things I want to ask you, but we're going to give people just a few more minutes because I do want to ask, you know, if you were to give some guidance, and this one I will leave for mainly our friends who are childcare owner and operators, because that's what this podcast is, set up for. But if you were to give them any thoughts that you've had the experiences yourself and you're like, you know what, if I could convey some just top considerations of how they should possibly think, especially if they're struggling a bit, especially if they're going through transitional times where, we all know that the future is no guarantee for anything. And sometimes that future scares us. I'm sure you get phone calls where someone is just like, I just got to sell this business. I can't take it anymore. And it's tough because they're having a very emotional feeling. Sometimes it's not a factual thing that's happened, but it's emotional. What are some of the guidance that you would give to our audience when it comes to operating schools and the way to maybe think about your business as it continues to grow and operate?
Yeah, really good question, Tony. I feel like the early education environment is so conducive to support from other owners today, much more so than ever before. There are fantastic groups where you can get aligned with other owners who are willing to talk to you anytime, to share their successes, to cheer you on, to be your accountability partner. And the simplest place to start with that is if your state has a childcare association or event you can get involved in. If they're lobbying, get involved in that. Get to know the national organizations that do good events. Consider a mastermind group or a mentoring program. Just put yourself out there and get to know people. You're going to be surprised immediately how similar everyone is, how the challenges are universal, no matter the size of the school, the type of family you serve, the type of curriculum. Everyone's having the same challenges to varying degrees. And like we said at the very beginning, I don't know any other industries where people are more gracious and giving about support. We also said that, for me early on in my career, it was difficult to find women leaders, and that is not the case anymore. There are some rock star women leaders, and not just in this industry, but all over this industry. They will encourage you, they will challenge you, they will push you. So that's, and there's also a limit to, you mentioned in the very beginning too, is a lonely world out there, when you're the leader. And it is, because I have to catch myself sometimes maybe needing to not share some of my challenges with my team. I'm not trying to keep anything from them. But
Right.
sometimes it's just not appropriate, right? But you
Right.
need a sounding board. Sometimes I don't want to think about how those words are coming out. They just
Yeah.
need to come out. And there's also a limit to how much my poor husband can take. So I would find the people in the industry who have been where you are, surround yourself with people smarter than you, who have done the thing, and you don't be afraid to ask. Just, wherever you go,
Right.
find your people and surround yourself with them and make it happen. If you have to be the one that makes it happen, make it happen.
Yeah, and even and that reminds me too, from what you're saying, even if it's not within the industry, there's groups like, Entrepreneur Organization or Vistage or YPO, or there's a number of groups out there that you can get that additional support from. But you're exactly right. There are so many things where people are helpful. It's funny, when I started in our community in Western New York, I had talked to a couple owners early on, and they're very close to the best with every idea. And then as I saw some people coming in, I gave advice to people. I said, come on in. I go, I'll share everything I can with you to try to help you out. They're now some of my best friends. They are people that we get on the phone and it's like, hey, I have this deal going on. We're trying to have, service a company for childcare. Have you done it before? Yeah, I do. Here's some information, and we're doing all that now. And so I think your advice and your guidance is very good for supportiveness there. So with just the couple minutes we have left here, tell me a little bit about the book, Five Pillars, Purpose-Driven Profit. It's a book I received that was at the conference, and this is not a setup, but you just literally released this book. I think it's wonderful. And what also does it support?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. This is my favorite question so far, Tony. So over my 38 years, I have developed very specific benchmarks for early education business owners, and I'm studying it constantly. I feel like the Hinge team's in a unique position that we see financial performance across the industry. We're on the phone all day long talking to people about what they're doing, how's it looking, and and so we built 5 main components of a thriving early education business. So it's the cornerstone of our teaching. And for years, I've thought, I should really put this in a book. This is one of those things I mentioned, Tony, that gets in my head and it's like a gnat. It won't leave me alone. At the same time, I've had this very powerful gnat on the other side, wanting to support teachers in personal home and health financial crises, because I see these crisis situations constantly, and it breaks my heart for these people who are giving everything. They're in a position where they want to serve, and they're doing amazing things with children, and one little event can be the thing that kicks them out of the industry, or worse, kicks them out of their home or their car, or their utilities are off. And I had a vision to start a nonprofit. It is called Boost. You can find it online at boostbyhinge.org. Think we launched in July. We have given about $200,000 in grants to
Wow,
about 120 teachers in 6 months.
that's
And
fantastic.
we're ramping up our fundraising efforts now so we can get bigger. Circle back around to the only thing that made me put all that time into writing a book, which is a lot more work than people tell you, by the way.
Yeah.
Is all the proceeds of the book go to Boost, straight to
Wow.
Boost. Now, I priced the book up. The book costs $50, and it's not because I think I'm all great and wonderful. It's because, well, Boost.
Well,
And you can get it on Amazon.
could we do this? Could we attach a link in the Amazon link to this podcast as well? As if someone would like to donate to Boost, would you mind if we attach that to this podcast?
Are you kidding me? That would be my greatest joy, Tony. Thank you so much for that. Boost has been one of the greatest joys of my life. I've got an amazing team running Boost. We're about to launch Boost Support, which is education and resources. We're right now we're fishing a lot of people out of the river after they fall in. But what I really want us to do is go upriver and find out where they're falling in and keep that from happening. So we're constantly thinking about how do we help people learn? We don't do a good job in this country of teaching people how to support themselves, how to navigate banks and insurance and medical bills, and that's hard stuff. And
Yeah.
so we're trying to support a fragile community with more than just money. We want to give you money. We want you to be out of crisis, but we want to help you learn to be financially thriving as an individual, just like we want business owners to be. So I will also get off on that tangent, Tony.
No, no
Thank you
problem.
for
But
bringing that up. Thank you.
well, the
Thank you.
last thing I will give you there, because of what you just mentioned about learning and development, that's my world. If I can, I'd be happy to donate any of our platform server. If people want to create content specifically for Boost and put it on our platform and then deliver it, I will donate that to this cause.
Wow.
So
thank you.
that's something we'll talk about offline, but that's something I'd be more than happy to do. And we have ways and tools for them to package and put their own content on there. But if it's specifically for this initiative, I'm super supportive of that. So I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. We are so happy for any support we get. We're just happy for the airway, for people to understand how we need to support our early education teams, and also if they feel called to donate to Boost, we are good stewards of our money. We're fanatical about it. So it will all go straight to support teachers. We also Hinge donates all of the team and admin expenses. So everything that's donated to Boost goes straight to teachers. So we will take care of your investment. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Well, this has probably been my longest podcast, because usually I dedicated to an hour and we've gone over a little bit, but I want to thank you, Kathy. And you and I will stay on here for a moment or two after this, but I want to thank Kathy for joining me today. Kathy has been, now I can consider her a longtime friend and a person who I trust in this industry. If you haven't made it to Shift or even to her other event called Thrive, which she tends to have in the spring times, they're just great events. All I could say is prepare early because they sell out quick, but they're a great team. And if you're looking for, the possibility of succession, not just today, but maybe succession in the coming future, and you want to get yourself prepared, I just know that she has wonderful people to talk to, and you don't charge for your conversations. You just have an opportunity to help educate people. And tell me if I'm getting that wrong, but
you are not.
Okay. So
the preparation takes years in a perfect world, and we love to meet people way before they're planning an event so they can be in the best shape possible.
Absolutely. And so we'll also put a link in under this podcast, so you could see a link to get hooked up with Hinge and get connected with them if you want to start planning yourself for your own succession. So I'd like to thank Kathy Ligon for joining us today for ECE CEO Biography, Sage Wisdom for Childcare Leaders. My name is Tony D'Agostino. I'm the founder and CEO of Inspire Care 360. And of course, we'd like to help you out wherever we can, whether or not it's using our services or anybody else that you'd like to get connected to in the industry. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time on our podcast. Have a wonderful day.
You have been listening to ECE Biography, Sage Wisdom for Childcare Leaders. Thank you very much for listening. We're greatly appreciative of your time. We will continue to produce these programs on an ongoing basis, and please hit the download button and subscribe to our podcast so you do not miss an episode. Thank you very much, and hope you have a wonderful day.